All right, so Florida Representative Matt Gaetz is under investigation apparently for child sex trafficking. So this entire situation is obviously still moving and ongoing. We don't have any results of any real investigation yet, but just the last 24 hours of how Matt Gaetz has handled these accusations has just turned this story into one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard. So let's go ahead and read some of the details, and then I'm going to show you an interview that he went on with Tucker Carlson last night to explain himself, but the interview just goes off of the rails, and even at the end, Tucker Carlson says it was one of the weirdest interviews he's ever done. So here's some of the details as to what the accusations actually are. So the Justice Department is investigating Representative Matt Gaetz over allegations involving sex trafficking and prostitution, including involving a minor, according to a person familiar with the investigation. Federal investigators are examining whether Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl, reported by the New York Times, which first disclosed the investigation into Gaetz. The Florida Republican denied the allegations Tuesday and claimed they were part of an extortion plot against him. A person briefed on the probe confirmed to CNN that federal authorities were investigating Gaetz as part of a broader probe into trafficking allegations against another Florida politician, an investigation that began in the closing months of the Trump-era Justice Department under Attorney General William Barr. So, yeah, I mean, what the fuck? So he's being accused of child sex trafficking for basically having a relationship with a minor, and the details of that are like, he's being accused of technically child sex trafficking, maybe not in the way that you would intuitively first jump when you hear that phrase, but in the way that he maybe paid for flights and hotel stays, etc., for an underage person that he had a sexual relationship with. So that's really the child sex trafficking charges that he is up against. But in addition to that, this follows a weird series of events. So like the other day, Matt Gaetz floated out this idea that he might retire early, leave his position in the House, in order to go be a Newsmax anchor. What? Why? Who would ever do that? It's Newsmax. That seems like it's a completely out of the blue. Like, who's gonna go work for Newsmax and a network that is not even stable, that we don't even know what the future of it's going to be, and you would leave your seat early as a representative? It didn't make any sense. It came out of left field, and then this story dropped like a day later. So maybe that was part of a cover-up that he wanted to distract a little bit. I don't know, but it's a weird series of events as to how we got here. Then, after the allegations dropped, it gets even more weird. So here's the interview that we had with Tucker Carlson, where he basically tries to implicate Tucker in a lot of this shit, and it's just a bizarre interview. So let's go ahead and listen to his explanation here.
Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. So this is obviously a serious allegation. Tell us what the truth is from your perspective.
It is a horrible allegation, and it is a lie. The New York Times is running a story that I have traveled with a 17-year-old woman, and that is verifiably false. People can look at my travel records and see that that is not the case. What is happening is an extortion of me and my family involving a former Department of Justice official. On March 16th, my father got a text message demanding a meeting wherein a person demanded $25 million in exchange for making horrible sex trafficking allegations against me go away. Our family was so troubled by that, we went to the local FBI. And the FBI and the Department of Justice were so concerned about this attempted extortion of a member of Congress that they asked my dad to wear a wire, which he did with the former Department of Justice official. Tonight, I am demanding that the Department of Justice and the FBI release the audio recordings that were made under their supervision and at their direction, which will prove my innocence and that will show that these allegations aren't true. They're merely intended to try to bleed my family out of money.
Okay, so there's the first clip. So is it possible? So as they pointed out here, it is kind of weird how specifically he was wording everything in that. You know, I didn't travel with a 17-year-old. He didn't deny that he had a relationship with a 17-year-old. And then he talks about the extortion thing and just completely, that comes out of left field. Extortion is a serious accusation to level at somebody else, regardless of the accusation against Matt Gaetz. For him to go out and give a specific accusation like that against the Department of Justice, which again was the Trump Department of Justice, and that's important for one of the points that he makes later in this interview, but you know, these are very specific extortion charges that he is laying out here. So if that is true, and if those tapes exist as he explains them to, then that is possible that that is something that happened, that a member of whatever, the Department of Justice was trying to use leverage over a politician in order to in order to, get money out of him. But is it also true that both of these things can be true at the same time? Yes. It could be true that Matt Gaetz had a relationship with a 17-year-old girl that the FBI or the DOJ was investigating, and then an official used that as an opportunity to extort him. So just saying that your family is being extorted doesn't mean necessarily that the story itself is made up. Both of those things can be true at the same time. So that's what we're going to have to wait to learn about as far as the details are concerned with this, because that's really serious. Those allegations of saying a member of the Department of Justice was doing extortion against your family for $25 million. That's a serious allegation. So then it gets even weirder in this interview. He voluntarily provides this bit of information here, trying to basically implement and rope Tucker into this entire scheme. So this was kind of funny.
And I believe we are in an era of our politics now, Tucker, where people are smeared to try to take them out of the conversation. I'm not the only person on screen right now who's been falsely accused of a terrible sex act. You were accused of something that you did not do, and so you know what this feels like. You know the pain it can bring to your family, and you know how it just puts people on defense when you're accused of something so salacious and awful. But it did not happen. It is not true.
Yeah, so he's trying to basically rope in Tucker in this, and Tucker basically responded to that by saying, well, yeah, that was a mentally ill person who accused me of this 20 years ago that he had never met. So drawing weird comparisons there. It's weird that Tucker Carlson would invite you on his show, and then you're going to immediately try to rope him into this entire scheme and accusation and be like, come on, you're with me on this, right, Tucker? And Tucker was having absolutely none of it the entire interview. He was like, listen, I don't really know what you're talking about. Then there was a later clip where Matt Gaetz said, oh, you'll remember we had this dinner a couple years ago with your wife and stuff like that, where, I don't know, he had a girl with him or something like that. He was trying to rope Tucker in throughout this entire interview, and it was bizarre, to the point where even Tucker Carlson at the end says this.
Gaetz interview, that was one of the weirdest interviews I've ever conducted. That story just appeared in the news a couple of hours ago. And on the certainty that there's always more than you read in the newspaper, we immediately called Matt Gaetz and asked him to come on and tell us more, which, as you saw, he did. I don't think that clarified much, but it certainly showed this is a deeply interesting story, and we'll be following it. Don't quite understand it, but we'll bring you more when we find out.
So yeah, I mean, listen, when even Tucker Carlson, who is, can spin anything, can be a Republican lapdog for some of these politicians and spin any story to make them look good, when even Tucker Carlson is not on your side on this thing and he thinks that the interview was weird, that's when you know you're really fucked up here, okay? I don't know why Matt Gaetz decided it was a good idea to immediately go on all of these shows and, bring up all of this weird shit in correspondence with this and confuse a lot of people, but it wasn't clarifying, like Tucker just said. The interview was not clarifying at all. They didn't even really get down to the core root of the accusations themselves, but there was a lot of other shit that was in this as well. He says that he voluntarily provides this information. This was one of the weirdest parts. Gaetz mentions that someone has alleged that there's photos of him with child prostitutes, and he claims that the pictures don't exist. So let's go ahead and listen to what he had to say here.
Again, I really saw this as a deeply troubling challenge for my family on March 16th, when people were, talking about a minor and that there were pictures of me with child prostitutes. That's obviously false. There will be no such pictures because no such thing happened. But really on March 16th was when this got going.
Why would you say that? This was not a story that was in the news. That accusation that he just talked about, pictures of him with child prostitutes or whatever he said, that was not in the news. That was not a breaking story. He just voluntarily brought this up in this interview. So again, just a bizarre interview that he gave here. And then of course, putting into, I'm not even going to play this clip because it's not worth hearing about, but this is the typical cancel culture narrative that they're feeding into as well, saying, oh, well, I'm a conservative and that's why all of this is happening. That talking point is easily refuted by the fact that, again, this whole entire investigation was started under Trump. It was started at the tail end of the Trump administration under Bill Barr. So, you can't possibly say, oh, this is Joe Biden and radical liberals that are coming after me to try to smear me because I'm a conservative. So, yeah, all in all, this situation is extremely weird, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because, Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republican Party in the House, came forward and said if the allegations are proven true, he's going to lose all his committee assignments, etc. So, he's pretty much fucked if this is true. But is it true? I don't know. We'll have to find more details. Just looking at these interviews and the way that Matt Gaetz is talking about it, it seems like he did something, okay? I don't know exactly what he did, but it seems like he definitely did something wrong, and he kind of knows that he did something wrong, and feels like he's in hot water, and that's why he ran on Tucker's show to start, rambling and talking about a bunch of other things that are pretty much unrelated, and trying to rope Tucker into this entire scheme with him. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out, but I'll bring you more updates as we do. Really interesting stuff here from Matt Gaetz. Yeah, you might be fucked.